Okay. Cool. Meeting's live stream now. Usual boilerplate. This meeting is being recorded and it's being live streamed to YouTube. Will be online in a bit. Our meetings and our group adheres to the code of conduct of CNCF Linux Foundation and the Cloud Native Security Tag Security Code of Conduct. If you can, please fill in your name and your affiliation in the meeting notes if it still exists. And please, if you have any updates or you want to talk to something, please let us know. If you are a new member, also please indicate it in the notes. Cool. Today's going to be a working meeting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of updates from the different working groups that we have. We're going to do some personal updates as well as take a look at what's coming up in the tag and how folks can get involved. So before we start, do we have any new folks that joined the call?
Well, I've been in a call before, but this is just like the second one.
Awesome. Do you want to reintroduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about what you do?
Hello, everybody. I am Vicente Herrera. I work at Control Plane. We are a security consultancy. I previously worked at SysTig, where I was product manager, and I'm involved in the past with Falco and all security-related stuff in general for Kubernetes.
Awesome. Are you also in the UK or?
I'm in Spain. Most of my colleagues are in UK, but I am in Spain.
Awesome. Cool. We are planning to start up a EU-friendly meeting of this group, and most likely we'll end up doing like kind of a weekly alternating between the US and the EU-friendly times. So excited. Thanks for joining. Cool. Just looking at the list again.
Yeah, I'll jump in here really quick. My name is Brent Keller. I just posted in the Slack channel as of like 10 minutes ago. I'm a software engineer for a company called Defense Unicorns, mainly for software logistics inside of Kubernetes-based environments. So for me, really what I'm looking to get into is, the community experience, the community driven troubleshooting, and kind of that fostering of, how do we create these solutions that work in all these different places. And so I've been working on getting myself integrated into Slack channels and whatnot to try to assist in people ranging from very basic problems to things where, they're looking at the architecture of things. And this is kind of a space that interests me, and I'm looking to see, where I can help.
Awesome. Welcome, Brent. Yeah, we have, if you have any questions or anything, free to reach out to any of the members or any of the leadership team. Most of our stuff is in GitHub. So it's a lot of things. So even I get lost and don't remember where things are sometimes. But besides the regular Slack channel, if you kind of just like do a search on the Slack channels for tag security, you see like multiple different working groups. So if like we have the supply chain, we have the controls one. So feel free to join any if you're interested. But really the kind of main operations of the group is through all the GitHub issues. So search for issues, see something they're interested in. And we'll be doing a little bit of this later when we do a bit of triage. Yeah, awesome. Welcome, Brett. Okay, I think that should be all the new members. I'm having issues opening the doc now. It says it's just me or folks also having that issue?
Yeah, I'm still running into the issue. And I'm occasionally getting this file might be unavailable right now due to heavy traffic.
Yeah, I got that as well.
Yeah, I just tried accessing it. It worked for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in also. No issues.
You guys gotta tell us how you get the special flag on your account. Cool. So before we get into kind of like working groups, check-ins and things like that, let's just go around. See, does anyone have any updates? Cool things that you're working on, any announcement, blog posts, anything that you want to share? Okay, looks like no updates. I do have an update. We recently published a set of blog posts from the Salsa community as well as with OSP. So we have one called the compares like Salsa with SSDF. This was just today published in to the Salsa blog. We also have a blog that we publish on the Google Security blog on how to use SBOMs, SBOMs in actions, how we use them, mapping to OSP through certain SBOM tooling with SPDX. Yeah, so that's it from my side in terms of trying cool things. If you're interested, let me know if you want to chat.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things on the supply chain side. So alongside the same sort of thing with the Salsa work. So Salsa is gearing towards trying to reach 1.0 soon. So that's going to be there's going to be some changes to the actual spec. There's going to be some changes to the actual spec a little bit to make certain things a little bit clearer. There's also interest in sort of collaborating a little bit from the perspective of, hey, we have that best practices document. How does that map to Salsa or vice versa? Where do the things sort of link up? There is sort of some interest as well from the perspective of, hey, is there can we do supply chain security Salsa level stuff for CNCF projects? Are there any good case studies? Are there CNCF projects that are currently looking at, and for example, there are a few like Kubernetes and Cert Manager that are looking at Salsa that maybe want to link up with the Salsa maintainers a little bit more so that we can write more about it and so on. So there's some interesting stuff there. There's also interest in potentially starting to certify particular like builders to be like, this is a Salsa level 3 builder we think by default, or this is what using GitHub Actions what you need to do to be Salsa. So that's some pretty cool stuff on that end. Similarly, we're still doing stuff if folks are interested with Fresca, which is an OpenSF project, but sort of is an implementation of the CNCF's, the security tags, secure software factory reference architecture. So it's an implementation of that. And, we're looking to do more stuff in collaboration here as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Any more personal updates or group updates from folks on the call? Cool. If not, let's go ahead to project updates. Let's see, we have, I think the only active group now is the controls group and security reviews and supply chain. I can do a quick update on security reviews on behalf of Matthew. Matthew's our security assessment facilitator. 1 second, let me bring up his text on his update. in the meantime, maybe supply chain. Do you want to give an update on the proposals, the survey, and things?
Sure. 1 second, just yeah, just a reminder. Doc seems to be working now, so if folks can get into it before. So yeah, so from the supply chain side, there's a couple of there's like 2 main proposals still out there, I believe. There is the SBOM one, which Parth is still sort of working on, and then there is also the what I'm going to say is it's almost like a proposal for a proposal now. There is the applying the supply chain security best practices to a CNCF project proposal. And so there's those 2 that are there, and I can give me a second. I'll get the GitHub issues for those things up. CNCF. I don't know why it's. Give me 1 second here. Yep. So here's the one for linking up best practices, and then let me go and pull up the SBOM one.
Yeah, I'm putting that in the chat right now.
Oh, yep, there we go. So yeah, so the SBOM one, Parth, did you want to just talk about that one real quick?
Sure. I did miss the meeting last week, so I'm not sure, Brendan, if you can maybe quickly go over what happened. Because I did make the updates based on, so I kind of condensed down the actual, based on some of the comments and feedback that I got in the actual proposal, and I can share my screen here. That makes it a little easier. Let's see if I can find it. That is. This is the one.
Okay. Sorry. We talked about it in group. We just had some feedback on like what are some of the additional topics, like the compliance stuff and the reliability and trustworthiness of the SBOMs.
Okay. Yeah, that's. So we're just adding that at the end, adding that also to the actual proposal. Is that what was discussed, or?
Yeah, it is considering it, and I think the kind of follow action for this is to get some feedback on the scope and see whether it's realistic to complete in the project timeframe, or that we should split up into maybe 2 sections or something like that.
Right. Yep. So I can quickly go over it for anyone that's new in the meeting. But basically, the thought process here was basically, can we provide some kind of a guidance, cloud native projects that are using SBOM? So kind of asking the questions of who, what, when, where, how for SBOM specifically. So if you look at the proposal, it's like, okay, who should be the target audience be? What requirements that need to be captured in the SBOM? Where are they going to be used? How are they being generated? And then what should be included in the SBOM? And then how exactly are the SBOMs going to be used in, if in a CI/CD pipeline, a vulnerability scanner, whatever else kind of thing. And then the last question is basically like, okay, how do we delete? Like when is the right time to delete the SBOM when it's no longer necessary? Before we had some questions about like, where do we do storage? And I think some of the stuff was about maybe about generation, but basically we kind of removed some of those questions because it was being captured or being addressed in other cosign and other SIG-Store meetings and stuff like that. So we kind of moved away from that and basically just kind of stick with, okay, kind of narrow down a little bit of the scope and just focus on guidance of the SBOM. So the thought process here is maybe kind of delivering like a position paper, a paper that we can give out to the community, basically saying, okay, this is what we think, right, for the SBOM generation and consumption. And based on the project schedule, we were thinking maybe an initial draft, maybe the first month, maybe it takes a month to have an initial draft that kind of answer some of these questions. And then maybe another half a month for peer review. And then maybe another half month for revisions and final comments and addressing everything and then having a final release. So basically, a timeline would be about like 2 months or so. But that's the initial topic. You guys can get, I think it's linked in the chat, so you can go in and read it and add things. Or if you think that it's still a little bit too broad, maybe we won't be able to capture it in the time frame. Sorry about that. If you can't capture it in the time frame that we have, then we can narrow this down a little bit. But
so I'm curious on removing the distribution component from this.
Yeah.
You're mentioning that was covered in places like SigStore and other upstream
Correct.
areas. I wonder if that's, are we deferring to an individual implementation? And also, is SigStore, they're looking at not just signing container images, they're looking at signing things beyond that. And I wonder if our scope might be a little bit narrowed down from what they're looking at.
Yeah, because they were looking at signing, blobs and all this other kind of stuff, right? Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the pieces that is missing is SBOM signing. And I think that's one of the things we ran into, and especially in like Fresca, is, like, hey, we have an SBOM created, but there's, even though cosign can push it up to, some kind of an OCI registry, but it doesn't do any kind of signing on it. So, that there's open questions around that, but then like, how much is too much scope, right? I think that's where the proposal is kind of like, if we try to capture too much information or too much, right, then this is going to be like a 6-month project, and I think people are going to lose interest if we have it for here. So I think it's
to slightly tip my hand. I've been looking at this from the OCI side, and we've got a working group over there that is talking about how we attach these into an OCI registry, how we connect this to images that are out there. And so my thought process there was just somewhat deferring to what OCI is doing, but just to capture in the document that, hey, whatever OCI decides, that's what we're recommending. And just to make that something that we capture in our definition here, so that it is noted somewhere.
Yep.
So there's a couple things in terms of what we want to capture that we could also focus on. So the NTIA put together what they call a set of minimum elements. The minimum elements are very minimal, but they represent the current minimum requirement for companies who want to join in on FedRAMP, and providing at the very minimum those elements should be enough to unblock them in their efforts. It has been expressed to me that the minimum elements will eventually increase in scope over time, so they certainly won't be the only thing that's there. Another issue that we'll also run into is that not every SBOM is linkable to the thing that they're describing. So in other words, many SBOMs will exclude hashes or similar, and there's no way to cryptographically say that, hey, this thing is attached to that particular project. So I would recommend at the very minimum, if we're targeting OCI, to just make sure that explicit link is there, so that we're able to validate that SBOM is the one intended for that specific image. And if we keep it simple, then that gives us something that we can declare an early victory on, but also gives us the ability to grow over time.
Awesome. So I have two things, I guess. One of it is on the distribution side of it. There is a CSTAR working group that's going to be spun up for this. Brandon, I don't know whether folks on the OCI side are in the loop with that or want to be in the loop with that. But I can work offline with you if we need our representation there.
Yeah, I'm happy to be that sync for between the two groups if we need it. Okay,
let me get you on the mailing list on that one then, or you can just ping Alan, of course. So on the other note of linking, Frederick, we are actually discussing this in the SPDX community. One of the things that we're doing there is we're making, at least we're having discussions of making content chunks, kind of like a first class element in SPDX, and also making that a mandatory field. So at least for SPDX, we're making a step in the direction for now.
Okay, and that's definitely an interesting approach. And many of the tools that are there, I think in any guidance that we produce, we'll probably want to separate out into the different phases as well over time, because build time versus after performing a build, like performing a scan, have different levels of information. Like when you do a compile, you always lose information. Or typically you lose information. And so we'll get much more accurate results with a build time SBOM generation than we will with a scanning version. However, the scanning one is still very useful, because the scanning is going to be how the consumers validate the correctness of the SBOM from the vendors. So there does need to be robust support in both directions.
Yeah, so I don't want to make this a place where I talk about the work that I'm doing. So I think Frederick, let's sync up later. I have some interesting things that I'm working on that kind of I try to address some of those problems.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Cool. So yeah, a quick update on my end regarding the other issue, 890. So we have some additional conversations with a few groups like Kubernetes and whatnot to kind of figure out some of this stuff. But I think the number one thing beyond just sort of saying, hey, how are we going to work with folks, is first sort of saying, how do we discover who to work with first, is kind of more what that proposal is becoming. So Parth and a bunch of other folks on in here, like Alex Floyd Marshall and Shripad, have come in and starting to build out sort of a questionnaire, so that we can kind of go to some of the other CNCF related projects and kind of ask them about, hey, is supply chain security relevant to, or do you believe it to be relevant to you, and how important is it to you? And, if you did have time, how much time could you potentially, or how much time do you contribute to sort of securing your supply chain? And so that's some stuff on that we're kind of beginning to explore.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so I got the update from the security reviews. So Matthew, our first security review facilitator, says, good news, Argo events review has completed. There are outstanding comments, requests in the 4 reviews to get resolved. The Argo team to get the first draft of the joint review going. When it's ready, we'll loop in and do a pass on it. And we'll wrap up the joint review. So Argo, just for a bit of background for folks in the call, the Argo review was a huge project that the TOC kind of asked us to look at, and consisted of 4 sub-projects. So if you haven't heard of doing like new security reviews in the past 6 months or so, because we were doing the 4 different Argo reviews. So this has been ongoing since the start of the year. We are finally making headway towards crossing the finish line. So hopefully within the next month or so, this should be all ready. We'll have a big presentation in the group to talk about the Argo review. Next up, I believe we have a couple in the queue, which I'll talk a little bit more in the next agenda item. Any questions on reviews or this in general? Awesome. So I think what we'll do now is I want to go through some of the work that we have discussed as a group. I mean, besides what we've already discussed with SBOMs and the supply chain stuff, I want to take a look and share with the group some of the other things that are going on. So let me share my window. Do you see my moving screen?
We do.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is tag security issues. What I'm gonna do is to just go filter like Q2 first. Q2, Q3. So we have no, sorry, just gonna do Q2. Q3, sorry. So we have a couple of things that are in the pipeline. Obviously, the first thing is security con. This was just completed at KubeCon EU. We just created this issue. Pretty much same stuff. If you want to get involved in security con, please comment the issue, whether you want to be involved as an organizer, if you want to be involved as a program committee in the CTF, or so on. So this is a co-located event that we always have at KubeCon. Another item that we have is the cloud native security map, because we have recently updated the white paper to version 2 with the ransomware and GDPR and all that good stuff. We will need to update the cloud native security map. For those that are not familiar with this, this is the cloud native security map is in this directory under security white paper, cloud native security map. This is where it's hosted. So you can see this is basically like the web app version of the white paper, and in terms of, in addition to kind of just the description, we also add projects and examples so that it provides a more practical approach towards addressing some of these issues. So this issue would be basically taking the new items for the white paper v2, adding them to the cloud native security map, and then kind of doing a survey of the projects that are relevant to these new areas. Any questions on security con and cloud native security map so far?
Is there any special motivation for the update, or any special direction, or just reviewing in general new projects and new approaches?
This will be kind of reviewing new projects, new approaches. We have something else in the pipeline, which I'm gonna get to. I think it's cloud native security map v2. This is eventually what we want to work towards, and so we discussed this sometime last year. And the idea is like we want to have kind of like user journeys or stories that people can say, okay, what's valuable to me today? I want to make sure that my builds are secure. I want to make sure that I have GitOps, right? Now we want to create these called like trails, kind of like you're in a nature park and you want to do different things. So say I want to do operation security, and then we'll basically have a trail within the map that says, okay, what do you have to look at first? Maybe you have to look at pre-flight deployment checks, observability, response and investigations, some stuff on the runtime. But obviously, some things are not as important as the others. So it's a form of being able to say like, if I think this is important, where are the first areas that I should prioritize, and how should I work towards that?
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I will be very interested in helping in that if it's possible for me to put something into it. I've worked in the past a lot with training materials and preparing, information for people. And And I think this is very interesting to look into this and maybe expand the information we are sharing there.
Awesome. If you can, please comment on the issue. And that'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay.
So one thought on that map, right? So maybe for Michael and you. So does it make sense to have the similar map for supply chain security, or it will be part of this control, this map itself? I mean, some interactive way people can look into it.
I think the framework will be the same, right? I think we maybe you're right in the sense that we have the cognitive security map for the white paper. We probably maybe need another section for supply chain as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there are a lot of common areas that distribute, deploy, develop. I think most of the things will be in the upper half, like develop, build, and maybe something you can think about.
And I apologize if we've gone over this particular thing before, just because I know there's so many different mappings going around, so I might be confusing a few of them. But I know one of the things that at least in a few of the other cases, and we might have talked about here, is it might be worthwhile to look at sort of OSCAL to help out with some of that mapping, right? So OSCAL is slowly but surely being, it's a NIST sort of standard on how to do some of this mapping in a way that, you have it encoded as an actual, XML, JSON, whatever, and then can then be sort of, and I know that's more for the specific sort of security control mapping to the actual thing, but just even there, some folks are starting to look at it as like, oh, here's how I take best practices and map it. And then because it's all sort of still that same sort of OSCAL language, you can then say, okay, now we want to do that control mapping. Cool. Now it's just the same language. We just kind of add in some additional stuff there. So I wasn't sure if we had discussed that here as something to also explore while doing that.
So we have this here, cognitive security controls mapping phase 2. And exactly, basically, I think exactly what you mentioned, right? Conversion to the OSCAR JSON or something that we can be able to validate. Right now, we kind of gave it a Q4 label. Obviously, I think if there are people that are interested in it, we can move it up and make it a work item for the next quarter. Yeah. So I will put this in the chat as well if folks are interested. And I will also, yeah, all these are on the issues. You just filter by Q3. You should find all these issues that we talked about. And for those that are not sure what we're talking about within this controls, what it is let's see whether I can successfully navigate our repo. Cognitive controls. All right, phase 1 announcement, I did it. So this is the cognitive security controls. The controls catalog is, I believe, a spreadsheet. And basically this does the mapping with a bunch of things from the white paper, as well as the security supply chain best practices. So yeah, what Michael mentioned is like the next step is to like really elevate that to being able to do automation and continuous compliance.
Yeah, and just so folks sort of get the what are the goals here, and it's not, a lot of folks who maybe come from the enterprise world are just like, oh, is that just like another one of those like spreadsheet exercises? To some extent, the answer is yes, but with the idea here being that, any large enough organization is not going to, they're going to come in and say, hey, look, we don't want to have to think about whether or not, you're accurately securing passwords. We want you to kind of tell us, like, how are you accurately securing, secrets or whatever. Oh, here's what that mapping looks like. And it makes it just much easier for folks to kind of come in and better understand, if I use this tool, how are you managing your data? How are you securing your data, and so on and so forth, without necessarily needing to be an expert in every single one of these tools.
Yeah, I think that's important. OSCA has been an area that I've been interested in kind of pursuing. One, from the need to get away from some of that Excel, area, like that time that just gets sucked into that. But two, from the specifying it on the tool, just like you're saying, but then also having the ability to like aggregate across a list of tools and produce some report that says, across all of those, here are the control mappings in one report, as opposed to I have 5 individual reports for my 5 different tools.
I have an intern working on I'm not going to call it a POC, sort of kicking the tires for Red Scale, used to be called Elasticity, with an OSCAL implementation. And one of the challenges we're facing with this is we're heavily on-prem still. So even though I'm in this cloud native meeting, a lot of our controls are not cloud. For example, we want to see APIs from endpoint tools that are sitting on desktops and servers, and that's kind of oblique, but I'm wondering if other people are faced with that too, because the control landscape's not really just cloud.
Yeah. I mean, agreed. I think some of it is just, at least with this group, practically, it's, hey, we're the cloud native group, so we're going to be focused on it. But I do think that one key component there that I think is something that in the past we've wanted to highlight is we kind of want to have that same view into what we have that is cloud native with what we have that is not cloud native yet. Like, we still want to see that in that same sort of view, without saying like, no, we need to replace our complete way of thinking about mapping stuff. We kind of want to say, hey, here's how we're mapping in our non-cloud native ways, and here's how we're mapping in our cloud native ways. We don't want, like, the key is we don't want the cloud native approach to kind of be its own special snowflake. And now it's like, okay, if we move over to there, we have to either support 2 mappings, 2 completely different ways of mapping, and that kind of thing.
Well said. Yeah,
Sounds
I hope
like
we
a
can do
cube
that.
on top.
What'd you say, Brandon?
Sounds like a cube on top.
Oh.
Conference driven development. Sorry.
I resemble that remark.
Awesome. Yeah. So Brent, if you can comment on the phase 2 issue, I think VC app looks like there are people that are interested in this. So I think once we get folks excited about this, maybe we can bring this up to Q3, start working on it.
Will do.
Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah. Cool. This is another thing that we discussed, and this was one of the initial motivations to do the cognitive security map, which is very much like the analysis we did with key management systems and stuff like that. The CNCF exploratory group did. I think the idea here was to kind of take a look at the cognitive security map and the projects that are part of it, and to come up with some set of recommendations that we can make to CNCF that say something on the lines of, great, like, these are areas that we have open source projects that are lacking. These are areas that are not covered, they're not touched on today. This is where we need folks to start developing, we need companies to start supporting, and we need to start funding these areas of work. And so this exercise would be really just going through this cloud native security map and seeing, okay, what are areas that we have to work on as a community. And one example of that is, for example, if we looked at, I think it was so we need a search function. Yeah, availability. Yeah, we had like two projects here. For HSMs, we have one. And so like the idea is that, okay, now we have to kind of take a look at these sections and determine, what areas where we have a good coverage and, what areas that we don't really have a good coverage on. So this is issue 760. And folks are interested, comment on that. The last one that we have, which we want to do, is a microsite, and this dates all the way back. You can see this 2018. We wanted to, as you can see, although I successfully navigated the repo to find all the things that we're looking for, not everyone has the same same luck as I do. So part of what we want to do is to kind of translate all of this, and we have like a lot of the stuff in PDF, we have a lot of the stuff in YAML, really translate it to a microsite that people can just navigate. You can just send it to someone, and they don't need to know how to use GitHub. They can just like look at all the resources, because we have like the supply chain papers, the white papers, but also we have like project resources and things like that. So there is a lot of information that is available, and the microsite is a way to kind of make it more available to anyone who isn't a developer and familiar with traversing GitHub. This is a project which, time and time again, we have said is very high priority. Unfortunately, in this area, we don't have that many people with the expertise of website building.
What's the principal problem for achieving this? Do you think, Brandon?
So I think the thing that we need really is someone that is able to kind of come up with a design doc for the website and the different components, and we can potentially vendor this out to the CNCF to get some help with the development of the website.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is we don't have anyone that is familiar with kind of like UI and website driven like development and design.
Yeah. Maybe I can help you on that also. I've been doing some Jekyll web pages for some repositories. Awesome. By the way, the presentation you gave at KubeCon with the slides you shared, I think it's a very good point to start with what information should be on the website, because I find it very informative of all the things that are happening and things like that. So maybe I can put something quick for you to see and start discussing on something that is running that we can, see awesome. and everybody can talk if they like it, what they like, what they don't like, and work on that. Okay.
That's awesome. Do you mind commenting on this issue? I can't find your GitHub ID. I'll post it in the chat. Thank you very much. Yeah. You'll be a legend for finally closing this issue.
Well, it's not so hard, I have to say, when you know what you're doing.
Legend.
Yeah. This issue has been open since 2018. Awesome. Any other thoughts? Any other things? I think I've pretty much covered a couple of the work items that we have, and hopefully folks feel comfortable with like commenting on things and trying to get involved.
Brandon, it's a new topic, so I don't want to add new things to the plate if you're trying to clear the plate.
Go for it.
The thing I want to ask about is namespace. So we're trying to think about how to use namespace in some greenfield settings. So I looked around to see what best practices were for implementing namespaces, even in cloud native world, where it could be a control, potentially inspection point, and maybe a blocker if you want to do an enforcement action against a namespace.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just metadata, and it has special implementation features that's beyond what metadata is. But I wondered if people have addressed this as a specific best practice for for our settings. Anything that I missed that's out there?
I know in the world of package managers, which I think is maybe a subset of the problem you're looking at, the OpenSSF has a working group for package managers or securing package managers. And they've talked a little bit about spacing there as well, and like the different approaches to managing namespaces within a repository, which I'm not sure if that's the same issue you're looking at or if it's something broader, but.
I'll look at anything. It's all.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find something to send you.
That'd be cool. Yeah. So where the developers went, being that they're developers, is they started putting namespace in like dev, QA, production. I said, that's attributes. That's not right. That's not it. And then they wanted to say, well, we'll use the name of the applications, but the applications are built out of microservices. And so the namespaces for the clusters, and so on aren't really equivalent with the applications either. So they don't really have the security granularity that we want either. And that's kind of the scenario for metadata in general, but namespaces are, I don't know what, more low-hanging fruit, I would think, for naming conventions. And so that's the topic.
So I know that there are some limitations, at least like in the way that I'm like not an expert in this, but I'm just aware of some of these issues. So maybe like Pushka, that's like a Kubernetes 6 security person, can correct me. But I know that there has been this kind of like difficulty with namespaces in Kubernetes, especially with like service accounts and identities not really directly being linked to the namespaces. And I know that because of that, OpenShift, when they implemented OpenShift, introduced this idea of projects, which would wrangle all these identities and somehow create resources to better define the scope of the namespace. From what I hear, it was pretty messy and may not have been that successful. But I don't know too much about details. I don't know if anyone knows someone from Red Hat that kind of worked on that maybe will say more about it.
I don't have anything particular to add there, but in namespaces in general, like I know like the multi-tenant working group looks at namespaces pretty heavily, and that may be an area worth investigating just to see. Their perspective is likely going to be a little different, but with regards to maybe some of the boundaries you're trying to establish, there might be some common design patterns.
Good catch. Yeah, it's a good idea too. Yeah, thanks, Brandon.
Talking about that, I would also there is the Flux folks have just created a multi-tenancy proposal. Maybe interesting to talk to the folks there.
Okay.
We are also looking for someone to kind of like guide that proposal as well. Let me find it and then I'll send that to you.
Cool.
Awesome.
Mark, it sounds like there is a lot of interest and multiple different groups working on this. Would you mind creating an issue so we can get all the resources together, and then if other folks want to perhaps have a presentation in future, we can also call them using that?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to conclude that thought, it's the more I thought about it, it seemed like an OPA thing. That's not where you start thinking about this, but where we ended up is, wait, it needs to end up being a policy thing that you can implement a policy in the namespace, but it's a different kind of a beast the way it's grown up.
Yeah, even so, you can do it multiple ways as well.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to join late. Every other week, I have a competing meeting.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, I always see you on 2 calls at the same time. So awesome. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, do open the issue, and then as Professor just said, then we can comment on it. Hopefully, I can tag some folks in as well. Any other things that we're gonna bring up in the last 4 minutes? But before that, just a quick preview into what's happening. Next week, there's Open Source Summit, but we have potentially a presentation on Open Zero Trust Container Security Platform. This is coming from Susie. Mark, you don't happen to be related to that work, right? Okay. So we have that on 22nd, 29. We have another presentation by Confidential Containers. This is a work that's pretty interesting. Basically running all containers and Kata containers in an enclave, and how to actually make that secure outside by, really we want to deprivilege as much as possible in terms of Kubernetes and the trusted computing base. Cool. If not, sounds like see everyone in the next week or the next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.